How come you almost never hear anybody say things like, I'm divorced because I cheated on my spouse? Or my business failed because I just didn't understand how cash flow worked. Or I got fired because my drug addiction was affecting my work performance. Hey guys, Randy Gage here, back with another episode of the Power Prosperity Podcast. I turned on the camera for you lovely people on YouTube who like to watch instead of listen. And we're in part 3 of our countdown on the 5 deadliest causes of failure. And if the 3 examples I didn't give at the beginning, give it away, let me share the what I believe is the 3rd deadliest cause, and that is unwillingness to take personal responsibility. Unwillingness to be responsible for your own actions, for your own decisions, for recognizing that the behavior you do on a daily business, on a daily basis, has an extraordinary degree of influence on what kind of life you manifest. Now, I can rant and rave and be judgmental on this because I'm describing myself for the first 30 or 35 years of my life. I could blame everything that was wrong in my life on some other person, some other external factor. And it never would have dawned on me in a million years that I was anything except an innocent, random victim. And I get there are random circumstances that we can't control. If a train jumps the track, is derailed, and explodes with dangerous chemicals on it, and you live 2 blocks from the scene of the crash, you could have, severe lung damage or worse. A satellite could fall out of the sky and land on your brand new Volkswagen. These random things can happen. But the cause of failure that I'm talking about is when people think there are random lives. And there's not. There's random circumstances, but there's no random life. Your life is, and yes, I get there's things you don't control. But I think 95% of it is the things we control and the way we choose to respond to the things we don't control. Here's what you hear instead. Nobody says, I'm divorced because I cheated on my spouse. They say, my wife was frigid and unloving, and so I had to find satisfaction somewhere else, and then I got caught. Nobody says their business failed because they didn't understand cash flow. They say, well, it was the market crash, it was the recession, it was inflation, it was something else. No one says I got fired because of my addiction. They say I got fired. The place was full of political bullshit, and I didn't want to kiss ass, and so I got fired. And of course, this takes us to the place where we end up frequently in this podcast, which is it brings us to that choice. Do you want to be a victim? Do you want to be a victor? And you have to choose one. Because if you want to succeed, you don't have the luxury of trying to be in the middle here. If you want to succeed, if you want to avoid failure and really break through, you've got to be willing to release victimhood. When you're an entrepreneur, an employee who's looking to move up, you got to take responsibility for your progress or your lack of it. Even the creative fields. I want to talk to my writer colleagues and my speaker colleagues and the poets and the sculptors and the musicians. This is really going to be relevant in terms of how you define success. I have artwork in my home. There's a Colombian artist who I adore on this wall, who's making his place in the world, I think. I have other art in my home. I don't think you can see, you can't see there, by a photographer who was in the Guinness Book of World Record, the first photographer who sold a photo for $1 million. How do you define success as an artist? If you say, my success is I'm going to write a screenplay that captures the story of my life that I want to tell, or I'm going to write a screenplay to capture the heroic story of my mother's journey accomplishing something, and you write it, then your success may be that you've finished the screenplay. And that's great. But if your success is, no, I want the screenplay to get picked up by Hollywood, I want it to get made into a movie, and I want the world to know this story. And this could be your book, this could be your painting, this could be your opera, whatever form of art we might talk about. It's really easy to buy into the victim bullshit, which is, hey, the starving artist mind virus. Or to say, okay, what am I doing? How am I crafting my art in a way that people are not accessing it? And is that important to me? Like, I've written 14 books. I'm working on number 15. Every one of my 14 books has been a bestseller. They've been translated into 25 or 27 how many different languages. So in different books have different, some have been bestsellers in Iran, others have been bestsellers in Turkey, others have been bestsellers in Germany, right? I don't know, that it's random in that sense of I can't predict it, but I also have to take responsibility. Like, okay, am I writing a book that people want to read? Now, in my case, I write my books for me. If none of them had become bestsellers, if none of them had been translated into any other languages, I needed to write them because I write them to crystallize my thoughts. I have a very active mind. I have a very curious intellect. I like to do thought experiments. I like to process and do deep critical thinking on topics. And I found that the best way to do that is by writing. When I have to write things down, it forces me to organize my thoughts in a rational, logical, linear manner that I can't get if I'm just thinking about them. So you have to know, like, how is success defined? And then once we know how success is defined, we have to look at what is your role in getting to that success. And are you willing to take responsibility for the things that you do? And you don't just fob everything off on your ex-wife, the economy, the president or the prime minister, or the pandemic, or the recession, or whatever, the war, or whatever the other external factors are. For me, this is a really, really difficult process. When I was like 30, my life just completely broke down. My health was destroyed. I was virtually incapacitated mentally and physically. My business had been seized by the tax authorities. They were auctioning it off for tax debts. I had sold my furniture. I was sleeping on the floor. My relationships were just a train wreck. So, I mean, nothing was going right in my life. And having having everything break down like around the same time forced me to do the introspection, to say, okay, I've had several business failures. My health is shot. I've had 11 negative, dysfunctional relationships in a row. Is there one person who was always at the scene of the crime? And that was the question I had to ask myself. And of course, I didn't like the answer. I was grinding my molars for days when I came to this conclusion that, yes, there was one person who was always at the scene of the crime of all these various tragedies and calamities, and that person was me. So I guess the homework I would give you is this. I want you to ask the question, in the areas that you aren't reaching success, where you seem to be hitting failure, ask yourself this question and this question only. What am I doing to contribute to the reality that I claim I don't want? Because most everybody would say, I don't want my marriage to fail. I don't want my health to fail. I don't want my relationship to fail. I don't want this dream, this vision, this project I'm embarked on to fail. But maybe you do. Are there some kind of unmet childhood needs you're getting? Where are you able? In my case, I was such an emotional cripple. I couldn't accept love because I hated myself so much. So how could I love anyone else or let anybody love me? So I substituted sympathy for love. Because I couldn't accept love, I could accept sympathy. And I believe on a subconscious level, I self-sabotaged all of those areas of my life in order to live in victimhood and seek sympathy. I'm not saying that's what you're doing. I'm saying I want you to think about it, or think about, is it something else? But ask yourself, really, are you taking responsibility for the things in your life, or are you blaming everything on external factors? And the big question, of course, is, if you're getting these results that you say you don't want, ask yourself, what are you doing to contribute to this thing that you say that you don't want? Give it some serious thought. If you're on the YouTube channel, let me know what you think in the comments. If you're listening on the podcast, you can always hit me up on Twitter. And I will see you next episode, and we will explore the second deadliest cause of failure. Until then, love you guys. Peace.